Anne, and I'm with the Ventura County Long-Term Disaster Recovery Group, and we are a collaborative of organizations that have been working with those who were impacted by the 2017 and 2018 wildfires here. We are putting together this series of videos that we're talking with our two rebuild navigators, Joe and Greg, and we brought them in to provide guidance and advice to those who are rebuilding after the fires. They're both licensed contractors, but their agreement with us is that they are providing only guidance and advice. They cannot make money off of any of the projects that they're advising on. So we primarily have been working with those who are underinsured or uninsured. So that's a lot of what we're talking about. And also just want to note that all of the specifics when we're talking about regulations or any costs are particular to Ventura County in Southern California. So it may be different where you are, but the same general principles should apply. I can start things off. We're really talking about common questions that we've gotten, and one of the first ones that we hear is asking about where do we find qualified professionals to help us with the rebuild. So Greg, what advice do you have that?
Well, there's a contractors association, which is usually a local jurisdiction. They'll have a list of contractors that are licensed in your area. And also the Architects Association has a list of architects and draftsmen that you could contact.
Any other advice for folks if they're looking for somebody?
Well, it's someone you've worked with in the past is always good. What we found on this deal is that there weren't a lot of home builders in Ventura County after, at the time of the Thomas fires. But all of a sudden, everybody who has a contractor's license is a home builder. And so we're finding that a lot of owners are working with people who might have been a framing contractor or maybe built patio covers or somebody that did, smaller, simpler trades, kitchen remodels, whatever. But and then now they're home builders, and that's a tough one. We're having to give a lot of those guys advice on how to navigate through the rebuild process. We are home builders, but only because that's what we've been doing over the last several years.
All right. What should someone expect in terms of the time required to rebuild a home?
It really takes a year of planning and designing and permitting, the process of drawing plans. I rarely ever see it take less than a year. Mm-hmm. And a rebuild almost always takes a year to rebuild. Unless it's a modular home, like we've mentioned earlier, sometimes those can go up pretty quick, but rarely. So you're looking at a 2-year experience, and then you should be aware of that could even be longer if you have things like issues.
There's a lot of issues on some.
I'm working with a family up in Malibu who they found out their water well is on somebody else's property. And then they found out they have one of their buildings on their property is unpermitted. Even though it survived the fire, it's unpermitted, and now they're having to tear that down or reconstruct it. So that's just extended the construction process even longer.
And other things is the codes have changed a lot to such a degree. There was a lot of people we worked with up in the Ojai area, and their house was too close to the new setbacks from the riverbank. So they had to find a place to put their house, or the water well was drilled too close. So now they have to go re-drill a water well in order to build. I mean, there's all kinds of issues that could come up that can be surprises.
Unfortunately, contractors are not the best at estimating how long it takes to build something.
Yeah.
Especially in this current economic situation where we have shortages of everything.
Yeah.
So it's just affecting time.
Yeah. What about the question, do I need to build the same house? We get this a lot.
If you built the exact same home, went down to the building of safety, got your old plans, said, I'm going to build this home in the same place, and there's no issues that are unforeseen, the cities and counties can help expedite your permitting process, and you may be able to start a little sooner than normal. But the general house can be in a different location. If you move the location, if you make any change at all, add a bedroom, add a bathroom, change the square footage. Hey, I've always wanted my master bedroom to be bigger. As soon as you make any change, you're back to usually a full
Plan check.
and submittal process, and probably right at a year to get approved.
Yeah.
From start to finish.
And I don't. Have you worked with anybody that's rebuilt the exact same house?
Not one.
No, me neither.
Out of hundreds of people we've talked with, you got to find out what the rules are for your fire rebuild, and your planner in your jurisdiction can give you that information. Some will offer, waivers on some of the fees because it's a disaster, which is good because your permitting fees can be expensive. You really want to find out what your rules and regulations are in your jurisdiction. A lot of people say, well, I had that building there before and it's grandfathered in. You hear the word grandfathered in. That's kind of a myth, and people say, well, that's grandfathered in. I shouldn't have to pull permits. In our jurisdiction here in Ventura County, if you change out your water heater, you got to pull a permit. So, permits are required for pretty much everything, and they have to be pulled, in a specific way.
Yeah, on this, almost everybody has something on their property that wasn't permitted. It's just goes with the territory, and then you can have, for example, a shed that's under 120 square feet, like a 10 by 12, and as long as it doesn't have any electrical or plumbing in it, you don't have to have a permit for that. But almost anything else you do. And then who has a shed without some lights and some power or something in it? So a lot of people are under this assumption that, like Greg was saying, grandfathered, or that the county or the city doesn't know I had that there, and that I'm going to get to rebuild it, and they're never going to find it. That ain't going to happen because they know more about your property than you do. Believe me, that's their job to know what's going on your property. So, it's trying to say Big Brother is watching, but they are. But I think they're well intended, but you're going to wind up having to permit whatever structures are on your property, and you're not going to be able to get around much of that.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this, that most planning departments after a disaster do have some liaison or ombudsman, some role that is trying to help work directly with fire rebuilders, and they'll sit down with you and talk through like what the process is and what needs to happen first and help flag things. I think we hear a lot about there's a fear of going in there, and usually it's like it's better to just know what you're dealing with than to try to pretend. So
there's a interesting program that this planning department and building department have done with what we call ADUs. Everybody wants, what's an ADU? It's an additional dwelling unit. And we've had some fire survivors who have built their ADU. In other words, a smaller, simpler, we used to call them guest houses. They've built a smaller, simpler structure on their property while they're in the process of recovering financially to build their other home, their regular home. And the county's offered some plans, some kind of what they call CAN plans, or pre-approved plans, and they've worked out for a few people.
Mm-hmm. And one thing, the county and the cities, they have a list of, what does it take to get through planning? They have a list they'll give you, and that's very helpful. Okay, I got to get this stuff done before I go to the next step. So.
We didn't talk about this earlier, but the truth is, if you've got really good insurance, and more insurance than you need, you do it really easy. You just hire a contractor and an architect and say, go for it, call me when it's finished. But that's almost never the case.
Right.
Almost everyone is dealing with departments, and like we are, and giving it, because they're short. They come up financially short, and they're having to come up with unique ways to save money, cut costs, A lot of them are building their own structures and so forth. We'll talk about that later, but it's unfortunate that it just doesn't happen quickly and inexpensively.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on it, so we can talk about it now, that the idea of being an owner builder. So that's one way that we know people are trying to cut costs, because you're taking out the sort of the project management of the rebuild, but that does mean you're working directly then with all of the various parts. So any guidance on that?
What we found a lot of after this fire is we found that there are a lot of architects who have kind of their favorite contractor or contractors. And so owners would go to an architect, and they would kind of come up with sort of a design build package where they'd work with in conjunction with the insurance company, but the lead guy on the project would be the architect, and he's the guy that deals with all these agencies, and you don't have to deal with anything. That architect processes your permits, hires you a contractor, and kind of guides the process, and somehow gets paid for all that. Other builders have their own drafting departments. We used to have one like that. Greg and I did years ago, where we'd sort of a design build, where we would design the project ourselves and work with the owners directly and build it. That's an option.
Going with a drafter is usually less expensive than going with an architect, but you're not getting all the services. All a drafter's giving you is like, they'll give you a plan of your site plan, showing the house layout, your elevations, the 4 sides of the building. And a drafter in some cases cannot turn in his plans and pull a permit, because you need engineering. They draw the picture, and then an engineer has to design what it takes to put that together. So
all right, so being aware of all of that.
Yeah.
So the last thing that I know we have talked about in the past is there's some people hire a construction manager. That's like kind of like a step down from.
It's something. I think it's one of the better ways to go personally. But what you do is you hire someone who is a builder to manage the construction. If you're going to be the owner builder, you're going to pull the permits. You're going to hire an architect or a draftsman or someone to draw the plans, and you're going to kind of go through that process of getting your own permits, and you're going to be your owner builder, because you maybe you've had some building experience, and maybe your brother-in-law is a builder, and so you kind of want to cut costs by doing a lot more yourself. You can still get some value out of a construction manager, someone from this area, your area, who's knowledgeable and works with subcontractors, has a good group of subcontractors that they routinely work with, get good values from, and you just pay that person a fee or an hourly rate or something to kind of superintend and manage your project from beginning to end. But without that manager generally doesn't have any responsibility for the quality of the work or the cost of the work. That's still up to the owner to manage.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.